I have Rob Richards on our show here today, and Rob is the co-founder and CEO of Key Living, which is a very cool, very innovative take on condo ownership, which we'll get to later. You can correct me on that as well. I'm sure there's some nuances there. But he is also a general partner with Plaza Ventures. So Rob has this unique lens to see things from both the venture capital side and the entrepreneur side, which is really, really cool. But more importantly to that is Rob has a really cool story that I want to get off the start to just hear, because one of the things that I read about you, Rob, was that you're one of the first companies to do SaaS in Canada. So, I would love to hear the story of what that was and how that came to be, because you guys already went all the way to IPO as well. So let's hear the Rob Richards story as the first SaaS, one of the first SaaS companies in Canada.
Thanks, Mike. Very pleased to talk with you today. I spent my whole career digitizing stuff, if I had to sum it up in 2 words, and physics degree at Waterloo, where I majored in digital signal processing. I spent the next dozen years in and around Nortel building digital telecom, and then the transport layer of the internet. Dozen years after that, working in the application layer of the internet, using software and the web to transform businesses. And the last one during that run of my career was called ecruiter.com. We were in the .com era, one of many companies looking to transform old industries, in our case, recruiting. And we emerged from being the first job board in Canada to really focusing on the back end application, processing software that we had created. And so we became what we called back then an application service provider. There was no SaaS. And we were first to market, selling kind of concurrent licenses to rental software outside the company firewall. So everywhere I went, heads were exploding. It was just so much fun. But we got traction. We developed, good revenues with a lot of great organizations, and took it public on the Nasdaq in December '99. We were like the second last company to get out before the what hit the fan with the telecom induced meltdown of 2000, 2001. Wow. Yeah, so timing counts for a lot in life, and we were fortunate to get our money, and we were then able to consolidate a number of companies that weren't as fortunate, and we sort of moved all the operations up to our data center in Canada, in Ottawa. And it was a really good, fun run. I left that to become an angel investor, kind of 2001. Did that for several years, and then moved back to Toronto and met up with the folks at Plaza Corp. And Plaza Corp is one of the larger, more successful condominium developers here in Toronto, but they had an active sort of technology investment side to what they did, and were probably on 50 or 60 cap tables. Nobody knew of the Plaza principals being angel investors. They kept it quiet. So we kind of formalized their angel investing into an investment club back in 2007, 2008. And then evolved that to what Plaza Ventures is today. Back in 2012, 2013, we recognized the tremendous gap in growth stage capital in Canada. You could get seed financing, and by then the seed ecosystem had bubbled up, and there were accelerators and incubators and university-based programs everywhere. And 2 kids with 50 grand could start a software company out of university, right? So there were thousands of those happening every year. So we said, okay, let's leave that ecosystem to itself, because it's doing really well, and have that be kind of a farm team for us to look for the companies that break out of the pack and start to develop revenue traction. And so in 2013, we brought on a third partner, Matt Leibowitz, who had a lot of experience funding companies with cash flow, being in the venture debt industry. And we moved our practice into Series A, Series B investing. So companies with traction, with recurring revenue, had proven product market fit, but now needed money to hire more humans to scale into contractual opportunity. So it's all about scaling, and we need a much bigger scale-up ecosystem in Canada. Everybody was recognizing that at the time, and even more so now. Back then, you could count the number of Series A, B funds on probably 3 fingers. Now there's maybe 15 or 20 of us in Canada, and that's still, 1/20th or 30th on a per capita basis of what you have down in the United States. So we have a long way to go, but we're getting there. We're now, there's more local money accessible to our growing Canadian companies, and we really want to get more founders to the level where they can think about going public and becoming a billion-dollar pillar company like Shopify. And we hope to see many more of those happen, or at least develop to the point where if you're going to sell, you're going to do it at a $200 or $300 million level, and not an acqui-hire at 30 or 40 or 50 million. So it's really just creating this environment for Canadian entrepreneurs to scale up, to have more confidence. And then we're starting to produce repeat entrepreneurs that have had exits and are coming back with that knowledge and that capital back into the ecosystem. So we're finally starting to get there. And you see that, in Toronto and Waterloo and Montreal and Ottawa, Vancouver, and even Calgary. It's just really starting to bubble up to the point where we're getting some critical mass. So that's really, really exciting. So, here I was a co-founder and managing partner of a thriving venture capital company, and I love that lifestyle. I mean, you have to think about 3 or 4 different things every day. You're always intellectually challenged. Your time is your own. I mean, you're busy as heck, but basically your time is your own. And I had no intention of leaving that lifestyle. But something started to happen within me, being a tech guy inside a condo development shop, over the last decade or more. I started to observe some things that became deeply troubling, to the point where I pulled out my checkbook and decided to do something about it in forming Key. And the first area of concern was the lack of alignment between developers and the eventual owner operators of our multifamily infrastructure. And we're developing to build and sell, and then you're done and dusted, and you're off to the next one. And so you're not economically incented to make the capital investments into technology that would improve the energy stack or the water stack or the waste management stack. Really strive toward creating net zero buildings, or even energy positive buildings. Those investments are expensive. They take a long time to pay back, but they do pay back. And then the owner operator of this infrastructure benefits from the fact that they've taken their energy bill, down to zero, or at least with today's technology, you can easily get to 50-60% reductions. So that lack of alignment was disturbing to me, because we're not developing sustainably. We're building buildings that aren't built to last. Even good quality developers like Plaza Corp, who want to build great product, can't make the investments. And it took up until just a couple of years ago for LED lighting to even make sense in a new build. And I'm on the board of Canada's largest LED retrofit company. We've done 3,000 condos coast to coast. But it only makes sense a year after the condo board gets control of the building. It didn't make sense for developers, because they only operate the lights for the last year and a half of construction, and there was a 6 or 7 year payback. And the purchaser wasn't going to give you the price per square foot increase because you had LED lights. There's, it just doesn't work that way.
Totally.
So we need to find a way to align the interests of developers and the owner operators of this infrastructure to make the right choices in materials and technology and process to create more sustainable infrastructure. That's problem number one. Problem number two is the industry is just fundamentally inefficient, in that 35,000 developers in North America build one building at a time, and they finance that because it's not an asset class that the Harvard Endowment can write $100 million check into. Every time you're building a condo, the equity you need is between $5 and $30 million. So it's too small for institutional investors, not organized effectively for them. And so we raise money from high net worth families. You make 4,000 phone calls, you get a couple of hundred families to write $150,000 checks, and that's the way you raise your 30 million bucks. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's a pain in the ass. And between that and the finance charges associated with retail sell-through programs, now you're paying brokers and all that stuff. And everybody then has to go and get individual mortgages, and then you take that package to the bank to unlock construction financing. And we've calculated that anywhere up to 12% of the cost of a condo is just non-marginable waste, right? So instead of selling condos at $1,000 a foot, we should be selling them at $880 or something like that. And when you think about 700-foot condo, that's a massive impact on the end buyer. So those two problems were bugging me. And then along comes this affordability crisis, right? I mean, 2008 created a generation of renters. The mortgage industry itself went completely upside down because of the financial sector manipulation of these products with credit default swaps and all this crazy shit that Wall Street was doing. And it just got everybody underwater. And so since then, well, we have a whole generation of our young people and our immigrants who are locked out of the property ladder on which their grandparents and parents built their generational wealth. They're locked out. They're stuck on this rental hamster wheel going around and around, and then prices are rising faster than wages, so rents are going up, and you can't save for a down payment. In Vancouver, it's nearly 3 decades now for the average person to save for a down payment. In Toronto, it's 21 years. We asked a couple of millennials at SoftBank in the Valley, and one of them drew an infinity sign. The other one sort of threw her hands up in disgust. They have no idea when they're ever going to be able to get on the property ladder. And they're despondent about it. Home ownership is still a culturally ingrained value. And we want that low risk investment. We want to be able to invest in where we live. Owners think differently than renters. They're more located to their property. They feel the pride and the comfort and the security of tenancy that goes with ownership, and they want that. It's a top 3 goal of millennials with education and marriage. And but we just shut them out of that opportunity. So the ironic thing is the capital from our wealthy families and other investors is keeping our young people locked out of ownership. So it's just increasing the wealth divide. It's just like a never-ending problem that keeps spiraling. So how do we cut through all that noise? How do we right-side the industry? We need a new economic model in order to do that. Just a whole new model of home ownership, and we call it ownership on demand. And we filed 2 patents so far, with a third and a fourth and a fifth in preparation. And so this system of ownership on demand just digitizes the home ownership experience right now. And we've taken the CMHC checklists and other information, and we've got a lot of realtors on our team, and so we understand deeply what the condo buying process is, having been in it for 38 years at Plaza. And there are 42 steps to buy a condo. 42 discrete.
Only 42.
Yeah, only 42. It's the answer, the meaning of the universe, right? If you're a Doctor Who fan, but I'm probably reaching too far back for a millennial like you.
Hey, I've got some archives that I can dust off once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, yeah, a measly 42 steps. Things you have to research, people you have to talk to, processes you have to go through, documents you have to review, things you have to sign, all of that. There are 16 costs to buy a home. It's not just about the list price of the condo. There's everything else in and around that, including land transfer tax and all kinds of other little things that nibble away at your pocket. There are 9 recurring costs to being an owner. Condo fees, taxes, repairs, all the things you have to worry about, your capital calls. And there are 8 major unknowns or major financial risks associated with being an owner. And people just don't have the knowledge or the time to fully understand what they're getting into. And you're seeing stories of, condos in Calgary where repairs, 5, 6, 7 years down the road that nobody anticipated, a garage falling apart and bricks falling off the building, and $25,000, $30,000 capital calls to people who just can't afford it. Then what do you do?
Well, and
right?
even further than that, purposely lowering condo fees on new builds, as you say, issue 1, the lack of alignment between the developer and the end user, right? And so those things obviously manifest over time too. So yeah,
they
there's
do.
countless examples.
Where I live in City Place in Toronto, we're heading into a $1 billion plus issue as we're realizing the windows aren't made to last, and we got other issues with this infrastructure. Who's going to pay?
Yeah,
we have no idea. We're heading into a massive problem. And so we can't continue building that way. And you're seeing insurance rates in Vancouver start to double and triple, putting these condo associations underwater. And it's because the infrastructure just doesn't up to snuff. So we got to tackle all that. And so with, first digitizing that journey and the development process, we can take non-marginal cost out. We can make the whole process so much more efficient. We can take more than 10% of the cost out of the real estate itself. and then take a ton of costs and middlemen out of the buying, owning, and selling journeys to make them far more efficient, effective. And so the fundamental value prop of Key is to provide the true benefits of owning, which are, one, you have an equity investment that's growing in value with the underlying real estate in a nice, stable way. It's not a public stock with all the volatility like a REIT. Now the REITs are like 27% under NAV right now because of public market sentiment.
Yeah.
So we can't have that when it comes to home ownership. So a nice, stable value tied to the underlying real estate, which always goes up in the end. I'll talk more about that. That's number one. Number two is you've got security of occupancy. There's no dreaded, knock on the door where your landlord is rent evicting you, or where their daughter's going to go to University of Alberta, and you're out. And that happens thousands of times a year in downtown Toronto. People who are renting condos who get that knock on the door and they're out, and there's nothing they can do about it. So security of occupancy in Key's model, it's your place for life if you want it. Nobody can kick you out. And the third thing is you can then get the pride and the comfort and the security of ownership, and you think like an owner. You have that investment, you have that security, and you can customize your home. You're going to take better care of the place where you live if you own it. I mean, it's proven time and time and time again. And then in our communities, everybody's an owner. So unlike condos now, which are isolated and fractured environments where you don't know who your neighbors are month to month, in many cases, now you're living in a community of owners and everybody cares. And we're going to layer on technology for a better social fabric, more connectedness, interest groups, and community support. And what happens in a pandemic, and are there resources there to help you if you can't leave the front door of your unit? And crazy story, we have an underlying medical condition in the family, and so we've been locked in here for the last 8 weeks. I think I've been outside twice just to start the car and make sure it runs in case we need it. But there's something down in the lobby. One of the 2 times I did go out, a sign saying, well, there's people here to support you, and here's a phone number of somebody you can call, and they'll help you with recycling and garbage and grocery delivery and whatever. But I had to go down to the lobby,
right,
to find this thing, which is like, you don't have to come down to the lobby, call us instead. I mean,
right.
just crazy stuff where you just kind of give your head a shake. So we can do so much better, from the way we design our buildings, the way we build in more resiliency, the way we build in more, social fabric and connectedness and community.
So tell me more about the Key process then. So you are full start to finish. So are you the developer and builder as well as the owner vehicle as well, or how does that?
We partner with developers.
Gotcha.
So our value prop to them is do what you love to do, assemble the land, do your demographics, do your architectural concept, and then build the buildings and deliver quality product. And we'll help you build even higher quality product because we'll get further investment in the technology and the materials to make better buildings. And we'll take care of everything else. The sell is one signature now. They don't have to go through the whole retail sell-through process. They don't have to worry about construction financing. We take care of all that.
So if go ahead.
Yeah. No, so if you're a developer, you're like, I can make my absolute profit margin is maintained, but I take 10 months out of the process and I take all this hassle out of the process. So my internal rate of return goes up. So developers look at us as an engine of growth for their business. They can do more, faster, better, getting rid of all the bullshit.
Well, if you think about it, right, you said there was 42 steps to buying a condo, right? And let's say you build a 200 unit complex, right? And you've got your sales team that has to go through all 42 of those steps for all 200 of those units. And obviously, some are easier than others, but that, as you point out, that complexity and all those issues are now replaced with a single signature with the Key taken. Yeah, I feel like that's a tough sell. I'm sure nobody likes that.
So we hope to grow rapidly because developers recognize that this is really an engine for their business, and they're going to be able to make better product, and they're going to be able to have their brand affiliated with something that has a positive economic and social impact and environmental impact.
So I'm a consumer and I want to get into a Key arrangement. I want to work with Key, or I want to buy a Key equity stake or something like that in a building. How does that work from the consumer side?
So the consumer, what they're buying is they're buying shares in a real estate holding company.
Okay.
So Key is structured as a dual company model, a propco and an opco. PropCo is the real estate holding company, and the OpCo is the technology company, the management company that manages the real estate.
Yep.
And so you're buying shares in the PropCo. So you have a pro rata share of the underlying real estate right alongside the world's best institutional investors on the same terms as they have it. And so we fund all the infrastructure with sort of half institutional equity and half commercial debt. And then we let owner residents buy in for just $25,000, full stop. For $25K, you buy a key, and that gives you the full rights of ownership into the unit that you then select. And we take you through a discovery process and a move-in process, and then you're an owner in key, but you own shares in the pool, right?
Right.
So your investment goes up or down with the pool of real estate, and we kind of ring fence that to a region. So we'd have like a holdco for Toronto, we'd have one for Calgary, one for Vancouver, one for Boston, one for Shanghai. And so you're investing in what you think how that city is going to do.
Gotcha.
Right. But it's transferable, and we'll talk about that. So you buy in for that $25K. What does that get you? Well, it gets you the shares. So you've got equity that's going to compound with the growth of the real estate.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is it buys you a reduction on monthly rent.
Okay.
So you're going to go in paying a market rent, and we price that according to what's happening in your city, and that kind of unit in that area, what's it worth on a monthly basis, market rent. But then you get a deduction. So say your suite is worth 500 grand and you put in 25, that's 5%, right? So you get a 5% reduction on the variable rent. You still have the baseline that you pay that covers condo fees and taxes, but everything on top of that, just like say you had a mortgage for the balance, right? So you owe $475 to BMO for your mortgage. Well, you start paying that mortgage off, the amount of monthly cash outflow you have lessens every month, right?
Gotcha. So with each payment, then it does deduct down against what your position is.
Yeah, we would add a little bit into a savings plan, and this is something you can set in the app.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so
work,
it's very
right?
customizable how they want.
Very customizable. How much extra every month you want to put in to buy up your equity and buy down next month's rent. Right?
Gotcha.
So if you get to the point where you've invested 500 grand, or your investment is worth 500 grand, you're not paying any variable rent.
I can see a guy like myself just playing in there and tinkering, being like, well, if I do this much, it's this much, and just playing with that app, right? It's like, well, you know what? Actually, this is what we're gonna do. You know what? We're not gonna go to Mexico this year, right? We're gonna do this because it does this, and then we can go to Mexico twice next year, right? Or something like that.
But at least now you have the information, and
Exactly.
you can make an informed choice, right? Information is power. Knowledge is power.
And the big one too is that barrier to entry has essentially been removed. 21 years to get a down payment versus
it's crazy.
$25,000. Yes, it's a huge chunk of money for a lot of people, but it's also very achievable for a lot of people, right? Whereas let's say Vancouver or Toronto, where your average home price is in the millions, or at least it was a couple months ago. Okay, 10%, 100 grand, right? Okay, let's go 5%. It's 50 grand. So you're cutting that in half, right? Yeah. Even right there. So that's really exciting. So right now you're in Toronto. Is that where
we're starting in Toronto? So we have 2.8 billion of real estate identified. We have LOIs for the first billion and a half of that, and so we're building some new condo projects from the ground up, and we're buying blocks of suites as well, so we can get going with current product. Our long-term model is almost everything that we do is going to be built our way from the ground up, and our buildings will be unlike anything you've ever seen. We don't need 3 acres of parking garage with 6'6" ceilings. Who needs that, right? We need to be growing vegetables in our underground. We need to be having maker studios and having weather protected ride hailing and scooters and Teslas on demand. That's the kind of stuff that we need in our buildings, not a huge parking garage. And we want to have fresh food and co-working and pop-up retail and telemedicine in our lobbies, pet grooming stations and all the kinds of things that are more suitable to our lifestyle. So our buildings are going to have innovations in them from the underground all the way up to the social fabric of owning and connecting with owner residents and the community around our buildings. So very, very special. But getting going, we're starting with some existing condominium suites, where the real value proposition there is, let me be an owner. So it's the fintech focus, right? How can I own? And every month, a really great thing about real estate on demand is that every month you can buy your equity up, or you can sell it down, right? So if you want to take 10 grand out to fund your wedding or your trip to Fiji, you can do that. And so we'll have an annual monthly redemption capability at a monthly share price that is set through the use of big data and through certified appraisals. So every month we know what our net asset value of our portfolio is worth in the city where you live, and that defines the price per share. And that's the price at which we will redeem your equity. So if you built up, now you have 45K in there and you want to take 10K out, you can do that.
So you have that access to liquidity as well, which is a huge one, especially, you know, when you've got something that happens in life where, let's say you own a traditional ownership model, right? Well, now I have to sell the house. And, you know, with the advent of iBuying, at least in the States, there's some level of liquidity, at least there was, right? But what is that market rate? What's you're getting? And that's, you know, what the real estate community would always throw back as well. You're giving it away, right? It's a fire sale, you know, and the data didn't really support that in a lot of cases. But the point is, it was solving the liquidity issue. So now you've got, you know, you spoke about 3 issues there. There's a 4th one to throw on your list, is that liquidity on the exit side, right? So
that's right.
And
you know, now if you want to get equity out of your home, you have to get a home equity line of credit or reverse mortgage.
Right.
And again, you're paying fees, and there's middleman and contract.
How many steps is that process?
Well, too many. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
and it costs too much. Everybody's got their hand in your pocket at every step of the process. You know, so now we have a frictionless month to month. You know, you're paying 50 basis points for a share transaction. Like
it makes you kind of wonder, what's the catch, Rob? Like, this seems like this utopian world of ownership, of property ownership. Like, why hasn't this been done before?
Well, it hasn't been done before. You know, like every great idea, you think, oh, 20 people have thought about it before you, and that's generally true. And we've come across a lot of people that have been thinking about something very similar. So I can't tell you how many investor calls or partner calls from people in the ecosystem. It's like, yeah, I've been thinking about this. You know, I'm glad to see somebody finally doing it. So usually with something like this, somebody just finally has to do it. You know, we do have our unique take on it. We do have patents applied for. So there's been some original thought, but not anything that other people haven't been thinking certainly about the need for. Right.
I think it's the connecting the dots too, right? Like, you know, one thing that jumps out to my mind is a conversation that I've been having, or I've had with a lot of people over the last several years, is how do I invest in real estate in a select market from a diversified portfolio approach without having the capital to do it, right? So like, can I get a regional specific REIT is the best example, right? For a city, but not in a REIT format, you know, and by doing your holdcos regionally specific, you're satiating, you're checking that box, but you're also checking all the other boxes. And this is something that, and you could probably speak to this from the venture side, is a lot of people have these really great moonshot ideas, right? That are like, you know, if you could do X, Y, and Z, this would be an amazing way to change the world. But where the disconnect is what is the strategic path that solves pain points all along the way to get to that end vision? And what you guys have been able to do with, you know, your path here is you started with those really granular, actionable things where there's a real hair on fire problem, obviously, right? The disconnect between the developer and the ownership, the inefficiency of the buildings, the affordability problem, and then drilling it down with your original thought and connecting those dots, but then layering on all those things that people are like, well, I've been thinking about this, but they didn't have that actionable step to go forward. So, and I'm sure you've thought about that, and you see this all the time, I'm sure, in venture is, you know, so maybe consider that.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing there is, do you control the underlying asset? Do you have the scope to think about and influence all of these things? Like, how does a passive investor get in for $500? You know, why shouldn't a teenager with $500 to invest be able to make an investment in regionally focused real estate, where not only do they have an investment that's going to grow with real estate, but there's a path to home ownership at the end of that, right? It's not just buying shares in a REIT, because you can't turn that into home ownership in the same way. And we'll talk about our economic flywheel in a minute, because it's a really important ingredient for the passive investor and the resident. And then if you control the asset, you can really look at every point in the journey and you can impact it. If you don't control the asset, you can bring your point solution, and a lot of them are great, like an iBuyer, right? And you can impact one part of the journey, but you can't impact the whole journey. And we've seen, businesses that don't control their underlying assets and those that do. You compare eBay and Amazon,
Mm.
right? eBay has no impact on the distribution infrastructure or any of that, whereas Amazon does. And so they have more control of the end-to-end experience. And look which business model is more effective. Airbnb has done an amazing job of becoming the brand for short-term rental, but without control of the underlying assets, they're extremely vulnerable.
Well, and that's that whole ecosystem play, right? And I think Apple is the easiest example for most people with the App Store. It's okay, you've got your asset, the phone and the iOS, right? But then because you can control that component, you can build all these ancillary things upon it because you control that entire user journey from start to finish. And so now you actually can build up those brand moats and those protective barriers to entry for the competition. But it also allows you to innovate on all those different pieces along the way, which
It really does. It really does. So for the passive investor, we innovate and we say, you can now buy into a pool of the best, multifamily real estate that you can get your hands on. It's prime real estate. You just couldn't get access to that before. There's no way. You had to be a high net worth family willing to write a $200,000 check. So now you're a teenager with $500 to invest. You can get access to that real estate, that amazing investment, right alongside the Harvard Endowment or the Canada Pension Fund, right? And then we can innovate in terms of the owner resident experience and what we call activation of the real estate. So why should real estate just be brick and mortar and just sit there and develop value in terms of what people think the brick and mortar is worth? Can we not activate that real estate in some meaningful way? And I'll give you two examples. One is, why couldn't we, for all the things that residents consume on a regular basis, why can't we do marketplace deals where the supplier of broadband or the supplier of furniture or the supplier of plant watering or dog walking services or the delivery of food, the grocery company down the block, why wouldn't these people be interested in having preferred access to all of this demand? And then why wouldn't they give the ability to convert loyalty points into equity? And that's what our next patent is on, is how do we actually transform regular purchasing power into equity through the conversion of loyalty. So now when you spend $100 at Safeway, right? If Safeway would let us convert the loyalty points associated with that purchase into increased equity, the person just spent $100, but now they got another $1.50 of shares.
so I don't have to get a toaster with my credit card points. I can get equity in my property.
You can get equity in your property, and it compounds. And so the more equity that you generate, it's also delivering a higher price per share because our rev share key to all of that is shared back with the real estate holdcos. So it lifts everybody's boat with a higher price per share. And then the third thing that happens is you're paying less next month in rent. So it's like this triple whammy. Every time you spend, you get more shares, you get a higher price per share, and then you get lower cash outflow next month. It's amazing.
I would have loved a bit of fly on the wall in that whiteboard session when you guys were articulating those details and seeing all the dots come together. I can feel the passion coming out of it.
Yeah, well, the light bulbs that have gone off, it's been like, holy cow, it's just so powerful. And then the other thing is let's talk further about Airbnb and short-term rental, because what we've seen now is we've exposed all the systemic risk in that industry with 1 month of COVID. Airbnb's urban business is just wiped out. It went from wherever it was, growing like a weed, to zero overnight. Their vacation business and they've got other models that they're responding to and developing really good revenues in other sectors, but their core, urban, condo rental business just vanished. And it was going to be hit anyway because they were facing regulatory headwinds where cities like Toronto and Vancouver and others have said, no, you have to be a principal resident. We don't want ghost hotels anymore. We don't want people leasing 20 condos and then putting them on Airbnb and running them as a kind of a hotel without any real service. And so ghost hotels were gutted overnight, and maybe rightly so. But it put a lot of economic shock into the system. So now all of these condos are underwater. If you were a guy that was leasing your condo to one of these hotel operators, that's gone. they've all defaulted. And so now you're putting your condo back into the long-term rental pool, which is probably a good thing. But a lot of people are in trouble now because they don't have that income. And there are estimated over 7,000 condos in Toronto that have gone into shock because of that.
Well, the Wall Street Journal, I think they're calling it magic money, was their big headline, right? The couple days ago. The magic money is gone now.
Magic money's gone, exactly. And it wasn't underpinned on anything very real to begin with. A lot of entrepreneurs took advantage, made a lot of money for a period of time, but then any kind of stress, any kind of recessionary headwind, and boom, you're upside down. So how do we take Airbnb back to its roots and what it was meant to do, which is true home sharing? It adds a lot of value to cities that are stressed with hotel inventory. It gives a lot of elasticity in handling tourism and things when people can share their own homes. And it's good micro tourism because it puts money in the hands of residents, and it brings money into the local economies where people staying at a condo, downtown, they're not going to be shopping at the Gap and Home Depot, right? They're going to be going to local restaurants, and they're going to be going to boutiques to get unique items and souvenirs to take home. So it really puts money into hyper-local economies. And it's how it was meant to be from the start. So with Key, we have this incredibly unfair advantage in that every resident in our buildings is an owner resident, principal resident. So we're on side with the legislation. And the second thing is we are the condo board. So we say, no, we're not outlawing short-term because short-term was done so poorly. We're implementing it in a way that guarantees the highest quality experiences. Minimum 2-night stays. 90% plus of the problems on Airbnb, Chair Girl or murders in Fort York, whatever it is, they're one-night party rentals. They're people who create accounts to go and rent out condos to throw a party. That's where all the issues come from. Makes breakage sense. And everything else, right? Yeah. So now we have 2-night minimum stays, only the highest rated guests in the system. So quality curation, verified government ID, and then we welcome the guests into the community. We say, no, you're a welcome guest. You don't have to get delivery of a fob in a dark alley at 10 o'clock at night.
It's not the key box at the 7-Eleven around the corner.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You got your bags and you're knocking over the Twinkies.
Yeah, exactly. So we've all been through that. So now they're welcomed into these communities with open arms, connected to interest groups, invited to social functions, lots of opportunity for experience and guides to take them through the neighborhood. Really make it a wonderful thing the way it was meant to be from the start. And we have the support of the founders of Airbnb. My co-founder, Daniel Dubois, came from Airbnb. He was running Canada, east of the Rockies, and a chunk of the Northeast, right? He was running Toronto. And
probably knows it well then.
Knows it well, exactly. So now you can if you're going to stay with your girlfriend for a couple of days, you're visiting your parents, you're taking that trip out to the Rockies. Now you just say one tap in the app, here are the dates I'm gone, take care of it for me. And Key automatically arranges to rent out the suite, safe storage of your personal valuables, arrange for the cleaners at the start and at the end, just make the whole process completely seamless to you. And then all of a sudden you got $1,000 that shows up in your account. And you can choose what you want to do with that. You want to buy more equity with all of it or a chunk of it? Do you want to save it for cash flow for next month's rent? What do you want to do? Which is just,
and it's that whole, the forced savings plan. The money that you don't see come hit your hand is so much easier to invest or save than the money that, it is just easier to spend. And so by putting those systems in place, you're almost building, in essence, better habits in a way, perhaps, right? You could be building better habits or even positioning society in a much stronger financial position even. So, wow. There are so many things to jump in on this. And, I think you and I could probably talk for, months on this, but I've already used double the amount of time that I wanted or that I was anticipating. And I feel like we could keep going, but, in the interest of your time, and I just want to be respectful of that. But just to kind of wrap this up. So on the Key side, you're in Toronto right now. For people that are interested and want to learn more about Key, how do they find out more about Key?
The easiest thing is to go to keyliving.com and sign up. And what you'll get is you'll get newsletters every once in a while, and you'll get invitations to webinars. And that's really the best next step, is just come and attend one of our online calls. We take you through the model in more detail, and we get such good questions. Our Q&A board is just lit up every time we run one of these webinars. And we're there to answer the questions and really fill in the details on how does this compare economically to a mortgage? And what do you mean, I don't have any personal debt? What if I wanted more leverage to make more money on the real estate? How does that compare? So all these questions are answered in great detail, and it just develops comfort and shows you the path forward. Key's not for everybody. It's not solving all of society's ills. It's not fixing the entire housing market, but it's a big chunk. It'll appeal to probably 70%. And we deal with real estate agents a lot, and they love it because we talk about the 70% of the missing middle of their CRM, right? These are people that they just can't help right now. So in real estate, your stance is, well, I'm not selling you something. I'm helping you achieve something. And so if they can go back to that missing middle and say, I can help you get onto the property ladder, and you'll build equity. And as long as you want to live downtown, that's great. But what if you get to a point where you want to have children and you want the yard and the white picket fence? Well, I'm there with that relationship to then sell you your first home outside of Key. So they view it as a real advantage. So we're not for everybody, but we're a big chunk of people that currently can't get on the property line.
I love it. I love it. No, it's when people talk about innovation, this is exactly the poster child of what it is. You're addressing a numerous amount of problems with creative ideas, new ideas that you're bringing together, but you also have that actionable plan forward to connect those dots from taking that that overarching big hairy audacious goal, but actually having that executed path to get there, which is just super exciting. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the show here and telling our viewers a little bit more about Key. And I think we're definitely going to want to have you on and drill more deep on some of these, because there's just so many great things to talk about. So thank you so much for your time, Rob. And yeah, I look forward to chatting more in the future.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.